When I first got all these tests done, I couldn't really understand how to hear much beyond low. And I wanted to talk to you about that.
Just because these tests don't look perfect does not necessarily mean that you have infertility or will have infertility. Most women, 29 years old, try to have a baby and have no problems having a baby. Only about 15% of couples actually have infertility. So this is a little bit of an artificial process that we're testing things in someone who doesn't even have a fertility problem. But we use these tests to really give us an idea of how many eggs we'll be likely to get through the stimulation.
Okay, so they're really intended to tell you not about your fertility per se, but about the likelihood of egg freezing or an IVF cycle working for you, and nothing beyond that.
Exactly. And more importantly, sometimes we do these tests and we find low numbers. It may tell me that in order to get 10 or 20 or 30 eggs frozen, we may need to go through more than one cycle of ovarian stimulation, egg retrieval, in order to get as many eggs as we want. And that can be expensive and time-consuming. So I think it's important to know that at the get-go.
It's impossible to test my fertility, basically.
The only way to know you can actually have a baby is to try to get pregnant.
Okay, all right. Well, I don't know if I'm gonna do that tomorrow, but I appreciate the advice.
You're welcome.
Getting a second opinion helped me put things into perspective. But I also heard from viewers like you about your experiences. That's how I met Deborah and her husband, Jake. They're a young couple with an unimaginable story.
We wanted to have kids, but I think the way we always thought about it was eventually.
Definitely post 35, for sure.
And so, Deb, you wanted to know a little bit more about your fertility. Can you tell me about that?
So when I was in high school, I had had a really large, ruptured ovarian cyst. So in the back of my mind, I kept thinking I would feel really terribly if I waited a bunch of years to have kids. I'm already with my life partner. And then something in those years happened that kind of foreclosed that option for me. And so as a result, I went to a fertility doctor and was kind of thinking, maybe I should freeze my eggs, or we should freeze embryos or something so that I can kind of preserve fertility.
Deborah got the same 3 standard tests that I had done, and her results weren't too different from mine.
She immediately was pretty concerned. She said, your AMH is very low for 26, but let's try to get you on an IVF stimulation cycle. And during that first round, they basically were not able to get any eggs from me. And that was a really scary moment. She kind of looked at me and said, I think you're going into kind of early menopause at 26. And I was not prepared.
Deborah and Jake tried again at the same clinic, but their results weren't much better. And they started to question whether or not their doctors really knew what they were doing.
We would go in and get scans and see different doctors on different days and get just completely conflicting, opposite information. And at that point, we were like, we don't know up from down. We have to go find something else.
So from here, you went to another clinic. And what was that experience like?
By almost any metric, it probably went equally as bad, if not worse.
We continued to see the same type of systemic disorganization, and we went through that cycle, and then we again got the same results in San Francisco, and we were feeling pretty devastated.
Deborah and Jake started this process to buy time and wait on having kids, like me. But after 3 failed cycles and constantly hearing doctors speculate about infertility, they decided to try naturally. And it worked. Deborah got pregnant with twins. But a few months in, she miscarried. Twice. Their doctor's response left them disheartened and again doubting whether or not he really knew what he was talking about.
He said, you're gonna go have 10 more miscarriages and then you're gonna come back here.
Yeah.
Did he give you a reason for the miscarriages?
No, and so that's what, I kept on the call trying to press him about how does that correlate to when I try naturally, and I wasn't able to get kind of good answers to that.
At that point, Deborah and I started to push up our sleeves and started to really do our homework, really investigate, find out what other doctors did.
We kind of decided to really nerd out, and we built a survey that we put on the internet and asked all of our friends who had seen a fertility doctor to take, and that was kind of what we used to find our third doctor. We ended up actually conceiving naturally the month that we were starting our IVF cycle with that doctor.
You know, for that 9-month period when we found out we were pregnant, up until when we delivered, you know, we didn't name the baby, we didn't want to learn the sex, we didn't buy baby toys. I mean, it was a prove-it situation.
Did it work out? There we go.
Laser. Ta-da, right on cue. Should I go grab
I'm like,
him?
we might need like 5 minutes.
5 minutes, is that cool?
Deal.
Yeah, his name's Laser, and the name in Yiddish means with God's help.
I think still we look at him 2 years later almost and we're like, I can't believe you're here. Like, you're perfect. We love you so much. We had our second child 3 weeks ago.
Also naturally.
Also naturally conceived.
Oh, let me see that little smile.
I cannot imagine life without them at all. Who's this? Laser, who is that?
Who is this, Laser?
Is that your baby sister?
Toes?
Yeah, where's the baby's feet?
It's sort of, I think, re-injected a sense of wonder back into our lives, and yeah, it's just been astonishing.
The survey that we originally used to kind of find our own doctor, we kind of realized like, hey, this is actually information that like would be really helpful to a lot of people, and we used that to launch what's now FertilityIQ. You don't have a lot of access to your doctor when you're going through fertility treatments. Like, you might only see your doctor for 15 minutes ever through a whole several-month process. And so there's not a real chance to understand holistically which decision you should be making. So we wanted to give people more context and really provide both sides of kind of every decision and flush out data so that people could make truly like informed decisions, whatever decision they make.
Do you want to go to sleep?
We look at Laser and at Yara every day, and we're completely in awe, and to be able to help people get a step closer to that means so much to both of us.
I went and got my ovarian reserve tests myself at 29, and it was a really scary experience. And I'm curious what advice you guys have.
I think the level of alarm that they raised in me about my natural fertility was unwarranted. Like, there's just not data to support that. You hear from the fertility doctors, oh, you have a low AMH, that means you should freeze your eggs. But in some senses, I feel like maybe it's the opposite. It's like the people who have a higher AMH might be a better candidate for egg freezing because they can probably do one cycle, feel good about the results, and move on. Whereas there's a more nuanced calculation that you have to make about, do I want to do one cycle? Do I want to do 2, 3 cycles? Like, how much am I willing to put myself through?
Getting Deborah's advice and hearing her story helped me realize that while I may have instinctively wanted to rush into fertility preservation, getting a second opinion is really insightful. Dr. Gracia's perspective on my results was completely different from Dr. Devine's, and both are a reminder that we really are our best advocates. Doing the research ourselves can be the most empowering decision within our control. So in the next episode, we'll talk all about the egg freezing process. But in the meantime, tell me what your experience has been like. Have you had these tests done before? What were your results and how'd they make you feel? Comment below, share it, tweet it, get at me. Coming up in episode 5. Have you ever wondered, what does egg freezing look like?